Welcome to S4 League. Take a deep breath and take a look around.
Hi there. It's been a while. Let's talk about S4 League. For a lot of people, S4 League was their childhood. I myself started playing S4 in 2010 and stopped towards the end of 2015. The game's servers officially shut down on the 29th of April 2021. So why exactly am I making a video about S4 League 3 years after the game died? Well, I kind of had this video planned for a long time, right after the game went down actually, but I just never got to it. And yes, I know private servers are a thing. In fact, most of the footage in this video was recorded in the S4 private servers. I'll leave links in the description. I also apologize for some of the clips being low quality, but it proved to be quite difficult getting some old footage of the game. Regardless, I hope you enjoy.
Yeah, y'all ready? It's time for the S4 League. We're about to explode like a bomb. That's right, put your finger on the trigger. We're just getting bigger. Here we go, yo. Bring it up so much time.
What exactly was S4 League? S4 League was a free-to-play third-person shooter developed by Pentavision and published by NeoWiz Games in 2008. In Europe, S4 League was first published by A La Playa, which was then bought by Pro7 Games, and then moved over to Aeria Games. The game was set in a futuristic anime-style setting, evident by the overall aesthetic, outfits and weapons. In S4 League, you could choose between guns and melee weapons, which you could equip up to 3 of in-game. For guns, you could choose between rifles, snipers, heavy machine guns, and even stationary weapons like the sentry gun. For melee weapons, you had something like the iconic plasma sword, which allowed you to dash with its right-click button, for example, or using the storm bat to send your opponent flying. You could perform wall jumps, dashes and dodges at the cost of SP, an additional resource alongside the HP bar. You also had some neat skills you could equip that would grant an additional ability, such as turning invisible, building walls, bind your opponent with chains,
Daddy, chill.
create wings to fly, increase your health or SP, or be a cheap little piece of shit. There were so many fun combinations you could make, and what's great was that you could create up to 3 characters, which you could equip with different builds and switch in between during half times.
I am under the water.
The movement in this game was incredibly satisfying. You could dash and dodge mid-air, for example, and the gameplay just felt incredibly smooth and fast-paced. Over time, players would discover unique wall jumps on certain maps and certain techs like reload cancelling or comet dashing. Hey yo, I still got... It wasn't just the gameplay, but also S4 League's aesthetics and overall art style that I really appreciated. It was unique, colorful, and you had a lot of options for some great customizations for your characters. I also really appreciated the animations in this game, especially the reload animations on certain weapons. My all-time favorite was the reload animation on the submachine guns. I mean, just look at it.
It's gorgeous.
In S4 League, customization pieces were essentially gear items, as they came with stats to enhance your offense and defense, similar to an MMORPG. I'll get to that more later. You could also level up in this game to upgrade your rank, starting from the rookie rank up to the S4 rank. Reaching certain ranks would reward you with some pen, which was the game's currency, and other items like capsules. Outside of unlocking 2 more character slots in the earlier levels, the ranks themselves had no impact on your gameplay and were just a PNG file to show other people that you have no life. S4 League featured several game modes like Team Deathmatch and the incredibly popular Touchdown game mode. In Touchdown, players had to carry a ball to the enemy goalpost to score a point. This is where players could show off their jump skills, which was one of the reasons that made this mode so popular. Chaser was one of my favorite game modes. It was essentially a game of tag, where one player becomes this entity called the Chaser, and they had to eliminate other players.
You're the chaser.
There was also a neat little PvE campaign called Arcade, and additional game modes like Siege were added in the later patches of the game. You could also set match restrictions to only allow guns or swords. The latter was extremely popular, especially towards the end of the game. S4 League had a total of 9 seasons, think of them like expansions. Each season added a new theme to the game and of course included new weapons and outfits. And while I preferred the original theme of S4 League the most, I also enjoyed Season 1 Dark Lightning and Season 3 Blade. Although I was massively disappointed that the Gatebreaker, you know, the purple keyblade from the CGI trailer, ended up being a force pack for probably one of the dumbest weapons in the game. Speaking of force packs, so next to the in-game currency pen, AP was the currency you could buy with real money. Now, this game was free to play, so it only makes sense for them to include some sort of transactions. While you could buy every weapon with pen, you only had very limited selection when it came to customization, and both weapon and set pieces had a timed duration. Every new outfit they added was only available through AP. The problem with AP, however, was the stat difference. I mentioned earlier that customization pieces and weapons came with stats, and yes, items bought with AP had better stats than the ones you'd buy with pen, especially premium items and force packs, because those had even better stats. Premium sets and force packs were obtainable through opening capsules. Much like a gacha game, you had to be lucky enough to obtain the set or force pack you wanted. Premium sets also came with a unique color variation, and both force pack and set were permanent. But because of the fact that items bought with premium currency had better stats, S4 League was effectively a pay-to-win game. There was a clear gap between pen and premium, and it was heavily looked down upon by the players, for good reason of course. Now, you could buy some force pack capsules with pen, but they were quite expensive, and the fastest way of getting pen was through buying capsules. Regardless, there is no denying that some of these sets and force packs just look really amazing, and that was the main reason why people bought them in the first place. Right? Now, you could also get certain AP items with pen through the Fumbi shop. The Fumbi shop was a lottery system that could randomly give you a set piece, accessory, or a weapon. If you were lucky enough, the item you received would be permanent, and it also had a chance of having premium stats. I actually ended up spending most of my pen on the Fumbi shop because there were certain items I really wanted. And I kind of had a gambling addiction, okay, so yeah. Something also worth praising is S4 League's original soundtrack. This game had a great soundtrack composed by Baxter, Planet Boop, and Ford Escape. To this day, I still find myself listening to some of the soundtrack because some songs were just absolute bangers. S4 League was such a fun game that even despite the pay-to-win aspect, it had a lot of active players, myself included. But even disregarding the pay-to-win element, S4 League wasn't without its flaws. I'm gonna start with the game's netcode. High latency was really frustrating to deal with, especially when you had players from a certain country. Because what would happen, for example, was that players with a horrible internet connection would freeze and teleport around places. For instance, if the player picked up the ball in touchdown, they would freeze at that spot but suddenly teleport right into your goalpost, even if you tried killing them in the process. You would also sometimes get hit by melee attacks from 10 kilometers away and could even just die at the same spot over and over again for some reason. And boy, did things get completely out of control when the entire servers were lagging. Probably the worst time was when S4 League switched from Season 1 Dark Lightning to Season 2 Iron Eyes, because that's where they completely reworked the game's interface. It caused a shit ton of bugs and issues, and of course servers were lagging like crazy. And for some fucking reason they changed their fonts to Comic Sans for a while. Weapon balancing was also over the place. Now, I understand everyone has different opinions because some weapons were really frustrating to deal with, to the point where people actually created rooms titled No Spy Dagger, for example. I could see why that was the case for some weapons, but sometimes it felt a bit exaggerated, like being called a spammer just because you used a melee weapon that wasn't a Stormbat or Plasma Sword. The thing is that most new weapons added to the game were either completely overtuned or completely useless. And while balance patches did tone some of them down with weaker weapons receiving buffs as well, certain weapons were still completely outclassed, to the point where people didn't even bother using them anymore. Honestly, you could dedicate a whole video talking about weapon balancing. Then of course we can't talk about S4 League without mentioning the hackers. Everyone who's played this game encountered at least one of them. From speed hacks and one-shots to building infinite walls or binding you permanently, hackers could pretty much do anything to make your life miserable. And there were times where you would find them in almost every single match. If a hacker joined your room, it was pretty much game over for you. because you had to stick around until the game was finished, basically dying 100 times in deathmatch or letting them score 10 touchdowns. That is, if you didn't want to lose all of your progress. Even the game's vote kick system wasn't that reliable because hackers could make themselves untargetable from being kicked, or worse, somehow had the ability to kick you out themselves. Yeah, not a fun experience. Now, this is just a nitpick, but it was kind of a shame they got rid of the old menu screen and even removed the old tutorial and license trials. License trials were short practice sessions for each weapon where you could test them out and were essential for some weapons before you could play them. Oh, and not to mention removing the standby lobby, which upset quite a lot of people back then. Thankfully, they decided to bring it back 2 years later. Now, let's talk about the Enchanting system.
Hi, my name is Christian and I am a product manager for Pro7 Games and I'm working on S4 League. S4 League is actually the most
popular third-person shooter in Europe.
and with this whole new enchanting system, it really is going to take it to a new level.
The Enchanting system was added in Season 3 Blade of S4 League. The way it worked was that whenever you finished a match, you would gain experience points for your gear, and once maxed out, you could spend some pen to level it up and enchant it, which would give your item an additional stat, such as increasing your attack and defense in certain game modes, etc. Increasing the level of your enchant would either increase the value of an already existing stat or add a completely new one. However, enchanting had a chance to fail, and if it did, it would reset all of your enchantments on your item completely. The higher the level of the enchantment, the more likely it was to fail. You could, however, spend some AP to protect your item from resetting and increase your chance for a jackpot. A jackpot would give you 2 enchantment levels. I think enchanting was easily one of the worst things they added to the game. I mean, the stat difference between pen and premium was already problematic by itself, so why add a system that would increase that gap even further? All it did was feed more on S4 League's pay-to-win aspect, and that by itself was already extremely unhealthy for the game. And look, I know the community was incredibly divided between swords-only players and unlimited players. Personally, I was more of an unlimited player because I just really enjoyed playing with both guns and swords together. I just never found swords only appealing, but at some point it felt like S4 League was taken over completely by swords only matches. It didn't help that Station 2 and Touchdown felt like the only existing game modes. Look, I loved Station 2 myself, I admit, it's my most played map, but it does get boring after playing it almost every single day for several years. What also pissed me off was the era of chill/farm rooms. Players would create 30-minute long matches where they would do absolutely nothing but just stand around and, I don't know, I guess flirt? Some titles had chill and flirt in the name, so I don't know what exactly they were doing. Truth be told, I don't want to. Don't get me wrong, if you wanted to practice your jumps, that's completely fine, but if you wanted to use S4 League as your dating service, I don't know, you might be better off looking for something else. There were times where I would still log into S4 League even after quitting the game, and yet it always felt like nothing's ever changed. And at some point it felt like the game was completely unplayable without premium stats, because it felt like everyone was running around with full premium gear and high level enchants. Now, I personally always prioritize my character's appearance in this game, and some of my favorite set combinations in this game had pen stats. But there was just no fun playing a match where you die almost instantly while you were dealing little to no damage yourself. Skill issue? I don't know, you tell me if paying triple-digit numbers can be considered as skillful. Look, I'm not judging people who cashed a shit ton into S4 League. It's your money after all, and if that's what made you happy, then that's cool. My point is that over time the pay-to-win aspect of S4 League became notably worse, and it's safe to say it was the main reason for a lot of people quitting the game. Not to mention put off new players. It really doesn't help that S4 League itself just got incredibly stale due to immense lack of content. It felt like all area games did was better grant access to premium items through various new store features, aka milk more money out of the player base. With development to the game itself being completely gone, S4 League has simply become outdated, and it failed to attract new players. It wasn't to my surprise the servers shut down. In fact, I think it's rather impressive the game survived longer than I anticipated. I mean, the Korean servers shut down in 2018. Was Area Games to fully blame? I don't know. I feel the only thing that could have saved the game was to completely change some core systems, especially in regards of the pay-to-win aspect. and even then S4 League had some other problems going on. There are most likely a lot of points I haven't covered, for example the lack of a matchmaking system or any feature that would have made the game more competitive, because all S4 League had in a competitive sense were official tournaments like Supersonic or Clan Wars. I was more of a casual player, so I didn't really play a lot of Clan Wars myself, and I only participated in Supersonic once. There was also the Esper chip system, which added some new abilities as well, but since I had quit by the time that got introduced, I can't give a lot of input on that. Looking back, it's kind of a shame it went downhill like that. S4 League had a lot of potential, and I really feel it could have been much more than what we got in the end. Regardless of how it ended, I still have a lot of fond memories with the game, and I've met a lot of amazing people that I still play games with today. Not to mention, this game got me into content creation, and while I cringe hard looking at my old videos, at the end of the day they just remind me of the good old times. I highly respect the people that stuck with S4 League until the very end, and I'm really glad the game itself is somewhat kept alive through these private servers. There hasn't been a single shooter game that I believe would be the S4 League alternative. I know games like Yanzi are similar, but they weren't that appealing to me. I am however looking forward to Code Zin Esper Arena. When I first saw the trailer, I must admit I was a bit skeptical, but after reading about stuff in their Discord server, it caught my interest. The game is marketed as the spiritual successor to S4 League, and I hope it captures the things that made S4 League amazing, but I also hope the game manages to make itself stand out in its own ways, so that it becomes a bit more than just S4 League 2. It's impressive they got Planet Boom and Mike B for their soundtrack, and I'm glad a project like Code Zin exists. The magic of S4 was simply the gameplay and the aesthetics combined, and it will always be one of my favorite games of all time, even after everything. Because in the end, I will always remember the good things of S4 League. Oh! Wait, you're still watching?